Hey guys, to start, I'm talk about what I thought was interesting in the play, which was kind of the change in dynamics between the acts and like the low amount of flow and cohesion between them was pretty noticeable. And finally, only the final act had any sort of resolution within the act itself. For example, the second act ended, they're in a gunfight with strangers. We don't really know what happens. The first act ended where they're around the fireplace or the campfire. We don't really know what they're going to do next. And the third act kind of has like the ending of their play, even though it's a little awkward. It still is some sort of conclusion. Moving on to the themes, I thought primarily death was a big one in that in the opening scene there, they're naming their friends and they're trying to find out whether their friends might be dead or alive. And then also in like the retelling episode in Act 3, there's a lot of death like within the episode as a whole, like Bart's family and then Mr. Burns, of course. Second theme would be change. Like the changes that are happening throughout the play are pretty drastic, as well, like the world mainly after the catastrophe, whatever happened, and then the change in the personalities of the characters pretty prominent, and then obviously the change in how the episode was remembered in the end. The third theme would be society, like the change in society, I suppose, and how does a change in society as a whole like affect people? For example, they mentioned how Coke was being sold for batteries as the currency, and I was wondering how people like sort of adapt to that definitely new lifestyle. Moving on to characteristics of the retelling of the play, I thought darkness and sadness was very prominent, as well as violence. And in the end, there was like a tragic resolution, in that Bart does win, I guess, in the episode, but his family was killed off, and that's kind of not how the episodes usually go in the show. It's much more satisfying and happy. How does it relate to the previous acts? Well, Burns killing Homer with a gesture that Sam used to comfort Gibson is what they mentioned in the italicized text. And I thought that was interesting because in one act, it's a comforting gesture, and in the next act, it's being used to kill Homer. So it changed there. And then secondly, Burns used the word babe in one of his, when he was talking to the family. And that's something Matt always did in Acts 1 and 2. So I thought that the author put that in deliberately, and I thought that was interesting. Finally, Itchy and Scratchy were originally thought of as pretty comedic in Act 1, but in the end, they're helping Mr. Burns, kill the family of Bart, and I thought that was an interesting change as well. So the significance of the play within the play, I think it goes to show how dark the world became as a result of what happened 75 years ago, and like through all the years, like small changes to the play, such as what they're doing in Act 2 and they throw in their own lines, small changes eventually led to what the play became. So I thought that was, and they became pretty dark and terrifying as a result. Moving on to what I think would live on, I think SpongeBob would live on because there's still a lot of small parts and references that people make to the show, even in normal conversations or over texting or whatever it is. And then secondly, Lord of the Rings, because I think even though it was written close to 50 years ago, we're still amazed by the story and interested by the story, and everyone, is pretty much in general agreement that that's one of the greatest movies or movie trilogies of our time. So moving on to my final questions. Why did Colleen act so startled and afraid in the first act, and then she was perfectly normal in the second act, running their little play theater but I don't know what the point of that was. And secondly, what was the point of the second act to end the way it did with like the gunfight? What really happened there?